So, Scarlett Burke, multi-hyphenate, actor, writer, jingle writer, artist, and podcast creator, is with us on Occupational Therapy today. And thank you for joining us. This is my host, who you know, Zach Zelwyn. Is that how you say your name, Zach?
It is Zealwine.
Well, thanks for having me, guys.
Tell her what we're doing on this show, because she's going to inform young minds.
Scarlett, Jared, as you may or may not know, was the king of jingles for 10 years.
Oh, he was? I had no idea.
Yeah, you weren't aware of that, I'm
No
sure.
idea.
Now he's got a 2-year non-compete clause in his contract, which means he cannot make any jingles at all. And unfortunately, it's what he loves doing. He loves working. So he needs to find a new profession. So what we're doing is we're meeting some of the most accomplished people from across all industries, figuring out what they do, how they got there, hearing their stories, and seeing if maybe Jared could step into their shoes and try his profession at, doing what you do. Maybe like creating podcasts and singing and all the other good stuff you do. You know what I mean?
Sure, yeah.
So, to be fair, Scarlett and I have worked together on a bunch of things, but she also has a really interesting story because much like many of the entrepreneurs that have been on this podcast, she figured out what she wanted to do with her career by figuring out what she didn't want to do with her career, if that makes any sense. So, will you tell us, how you actually ended up in LA and why you moved there in the first place, and how old you were when you first moved there?
Well, I dropped out of college and lasted a semester at Scottsdale Community College.
Ah, nice.
That's a good piece of advice for the kids out there. But you're not the only one.
Drop out of school. Start with a community college, a nice community college in Arizona, and then drop out. Waste some money. And no, I moved to California whenever I was 19 and moved right into Hollywood. I thought I wanted to be in the thick of it. So I was off like Franklin and Highland, basically, which ended up being a nightmare. So I was 19 when I got here.
And many people that we've spoken to, Zach, have, actually have told us, hey, they moved to LA and it wasn't easy and it wasn't a piece of cake right off the bat. Scarlett and I have met many people actually who have had the opposite story, like people like Garrett Hedlund that's like, oh yeah, I moved here and then like I was cast in like a huge movie.
Yeah, those
Scarlett,
those are the rare stories that I think when you're 19 you hear and you just cling on to with everything that you have and hope that happens for you. And then you move here and quickly learn that that's not how it really works for the majority. When I got here, I realized, I was performing around at like coffee shops, and because I was so young, I couldn't play in bars. So I'd play in coffee shops around Hollywood, and then a few places in the Valley, and sort of started stretching my legs as a songwriter and performer. And then I was doing some acting as well, and realizing, how much of a commitment that really takes, and, being a little ignorant about the whole process. And so I got into some acting classes and was really just doing both to sort of balance the other out. So
you have real amazing, just like tenacity. One of my favorite stories that you've ever told me that I want you to tell our listeners was the story about the first time you almost thought you were going to make it in the movies, and the whole thing with your family. Because that's an important story. Those are things that like you've told me many stories that are like kind of cringeworthy, but then it's like you got stronger and you got smarter because of it. Tell us that one.
When you're an extra, don't tell your family you're in the movie until, if you're an extra that gets a line, don't tell your family you're in the movie until you've seen the movie and it's out. I'll just start with when I first got here. My mom was gracious and kind enough to help me move out here, and so we were sitting at Saddle Ranch, which is like a rite of passage, I think, for everybody when they come to LA.
Oh my God.
It's like this is
gonna be the best how not to make it.
Yeah, totally.
I love. Keep going though.
So the waiter was like this really cute, obviously an actor, aspiring actor, whatever, bandana.
Did he have a
around his head.
bandana on?
Yes,
bandana
totally,
on?
around his head. Bleached, spiked hair. Anyway, so my mom is like, why don't you ask him for some tips?
Frosted tips.
Yeah. And so he came back to the table and he said, have you looked into acting classes and do you have a reel? And I said, a reel what? He basically was like, good luck to you. And I didn't mean it as a joke.
Sarcastically says, good luck.
I truly did not know what a reel was. And I wasn't saying it as a joke. And, I pronounced Wilshire. And so it's been a long road. I feel like I really started completely green. And, but yeah, so I decided to do some background acting. We don't like to say extras.
There's no small parts.
No, there's not. I can't tell you how many times I've been like a blurb in the background of a commercial or like a CSI series. So I went to Central Casting, stood in line for like an hour, and filled out my paperwork. Got into doing some background work, and the first thing I did was Cameron Crowe's We Bought a Zoo, and they had us going out to set every day for like a month, and it was in Malibu. But I was making like $60 a day.
Oh.
And I really wanted to get my SAG card though, so I kept it up because it was like if you got that voucher slip, it was like the golden ticket from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. But so anyways, I kept going, and like we were filming this scene in the zoo, and there was something in front of like a tiger cage, and Cameron Crowe like threw a line at me just on a whim, and all the extras are looking at me like, this is it, like this is your moment.
Your bags.
And we had all been like camped out there in like a tent for weeks, and it was like, holy shit, this is my fucking moment. And so he gives me a line, and I'm like counting down the days waiting for this movie to come out. And so it comes out, and I'm at my dad's in Wichita, Kansas, and we get the whole family together, like everybody. We had a whole row of seats, and my dad's going into the theater saying to like the ticket guy, like, well, my daughter's in this film, and he looked,
it's her movie.
This is her. And I was so proud, and like my boyfriend at the time was with me, and who like he was a doctor. This was like a totally different world to him, but I'm like, no, this is my moment. Like I'm gonna make more money than you, doctor. So anyways, we're all sitting in a row, and the moment is coming up, and we're all kind of like, pss, oh, this is it. Like this is her moment. And then the scene was done. And my dad loudly goes, wait, I didn't see her. And so they cut my like one line that I had in We Bought a Zoo, and but I did get my SAG card from.
Yeah, did they have to Taft-Hartley you? Which is, if those of you who don't know the lingo, they have to pay for you to join SAG, or at least make you eligible.
At that point, I had obtained like the 3 vouchers.
Oh, you had already done it.
Yeah. So the good thing was like that's how I got my SAG card, was being an extra on We Bought a Zoo for like 30 days. So,
and by the way, that story to me is like, many people are like, well, that's it, I'm gonna pack it up, go, the humiliation is too much, I'm out. But like I think that there's a lesson in tenacity, because you stopping right there would have never allowed yourself to do the things that happened next, the thing that happened next and next. And for you, having, multi-hyphenate skills, not only just like acting, and obviously you've done cool stuff with modeling as well. And, you've played Christy Brinkley as younger self in car commercials and had all sorts of great stuff there. But around the time that you started doing work in our world, she really just scrappily said, hey, can I, what do you do? What's this stuff at Jingle Punks? She came by. First demo she ever sings on ends up, being a theme song to a big Netflix series called what was it, Girls Incarcerated?
Yep.
And then immediately after that, we were getting a writing camp together for Zillow. And, tell us a little bit about that one, because that was kind of like,
Well, I
was
just want to go,
okay.
like, want to go back before, like, approaching, like, the time that you and I met was just, it was sort of like one of those things where I feel so lucky, and I do think that you do, like, people are meant to be in your life for a reason, and it's not always meant to be forever, but, like, it was at a point in my kind of acting career. I'd done some, like, I was on Ray Donovan and Lethal Weapon and Animal Kingdom, and I had gotten to a point where I told my manager, all the roles were just imply this and intimate scenes and everything and playing the kind of one night stand fling. And I just got so tired of having to, go through these, like, questions with myself, like, would I be okay with this implied intimacy role? And there was just so much of that, and I just got so sick of it. And so I said, if there's an audition that includes implying anything intimate, don't submit me for it. So then I really didn't have any auditions, because that was really what was all that was out there. And so that was like about the time that you and I met. And all the while I'd been playing at a bar in the Valley called Red Door. And so you and I met, and it was like, I'm in the music business, and, you hear that and it's like, okay, sure. Like, but then Jared said, I have 5 kids and I'm in the music business. And I was like, okay, you do something right.
I pay the bills.
So he said, why don't you come by the office? And it was one of those things where I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm going to just follow this because it just felt right. And Jared was so gracious and said, you have songs and you're a decent songwriter, and I have a studio, just come record your songs here. So that was sort of like, I live in Studio City, and I would drive to Santa Monica like almost every day and record at Jingle Punks, not really knowing why I was recording.
It was during a time, and also Zach knows this, at the company where, like, for me, the passion of the business sort of went away. And there wasn't many people who were putting in that kind of commitment. Not to say that there weren't really awesome and talented people on the roster, there are, but the people who went the extra mile, like people like you and people like Jesse S. and, people like Major and Pooh Bear, who weren't part of the company, later on defined why I wanted to still be working. So, like,
it was it was like the beginning of a writing camp that Jared and Jesse and I built. It started with me working with Jared at Jingle Punks, and so I did the Netflix thing, and it was like, wow, okay, there's something here. And so we just sort of hit the ground running with working together, and I was always bouncing ideas and songs off Jared. And so there was this opportunity to do a writing camp with Zillow, and I had never heard of anything like a writing camp, and I didn't really know what I was doing, and I think that was a benefit to not know what I was getting into. So we did like a 3-day writing camp, and it was for 5 spots for Zillow. I think I was the only, I don't know, I can't remember how many.
You were the only female songwriter.
Yeah, like the other writers were great, and I love like working with Gabe and like Jeff Peters. And so anyways, I'd never seen anything like it. We just were cranking out songs, but with quality. And it was really interesting, like, because I had been in front of the camera on the commercial side, but I'd never been involved with like the brand and speaking with the ad agency and, being a part of what they were putting together.
That was like a high pressure situation. We had like the client, the agency, within the agency, we built writers' rooms.
But what was great now, and like I see this more, I realize it more now after doing, more like pitches and whatnot for commercial spots. What was so great about that was just being one-on-one as songwriter to the client. Because we started the camp with like a briefing from the client going through the spots, and it sort of took out all that sort of telephone game message that by the time it gets to the songwriter, it's like, you don't really know. It kind of
What
gets,
the hell's going on?
Yeah. So it really was a wonderful experience, and I didn't know what was going to come of it. And then I landed 3 of the 5 spots.
So like one day of work, you ended up making, X.
Oh, it was
thousands of dollars.
I made more money, and this is probably tacky of me to say, but
Talk about it. Let's get tacky. I like
You're like,
people.
so wait, in one day you recorded 5 songs, 3 of them became actual jingles for products?
we would do like
for huge broadcast
each-
campaigns, like multi-year campaigns.
Wow,
I'd
that's like
say-
when Dolly Parton wrote Jolene and I Will Always Love You in the same day.
It is.
It's the
That was
same
a miracle
thing.
moment. It's the same thing.
Wow.
So yeah, it was
That's
the
when
biggest thing
took
I had
notice,
done.
Because after, I like big idea people, and I like people who obviously were making our company money. So then another, more things came up and more things came up. But the big one for us, and then we'll talk about the podcast stuff, was around, I think it was last year, we get another brief from the same agency for Taco Bell, and talk about that one, because that's, there's some bragging rights there with all the award nominations and stuff like that.
Ooh, yeah, the Webbies are on Tuesday.
We'll find out Tuesday. I want trophies.
So, how did that come about? Oh, well, you had reached out to me and said I have this pitch for Taco Bell, and
I think I specifically said, "Hey, you ever heard of A Star Is Born? It's like that, but with nachos."
that sounds about right. And so we drove up to Ojai and did like 2-day sessions with Jesse, and they wanted like a Star Is Born vibe song about this product that they had for a limited time. Their nacho cheese fries. And so the commercial was starring Darren Criss, and they wanted it really to feel like a trailer. And so we wrote 2 songs, and one of them was called Nacho Mi Amor. And
That's a good one. I'm bringing that one back for Uncle Drink, but a total aside. Keep going.
it was perfect. And then obviously they went with what's it called? What the one that they went
You're
with?
the
Love of my life.
life.
Which Jared recorded the original vocal on that and sounded like Neil Diamond. But so what we did
That
whenever
was my last schmaltz.
we put that song to the trailer of Make It Up As We Go and muted the trailer dialogue, and it like
Oh, Star Is Born, not Make It Up As We Go.
what did I say? Oh my gosh. Podcast on the brain.
We'll get to that one next.
But Star Is Born, yeah. And it just fit the trailer like so well, and so we felt good about it. And then yeah, that was the one they went with, and it took off. And
Congratulations on that. I will say that I saw that commercial and I was like, God, that is the best commercial I've seen in a long time. I loved it. I had no idea Jared was involved in it. And I think I reached out like, dude, have you seen this nacho cheese fries commercial? It's fucking amazing. And Jared was like, oh yeah, I wrote that with Scarlett. And I was like, what?
That was actually one of the, after all the years of like bragging and saying, oh, I'm the king of jingles, I actually had never, it's fitting that happened in the last year of my jingledom, because I really had nothing where when people at a cocktail party go, oh yeah, you're the king of jingles, what have you written? And like, that's the one that I could point to towards the end. It took 10 years to get to
So
something
now
that
you
was
know-
recognizable.
now you know when you run into John Stamos again, now you will be able
When he
to,
shames me.
when he puts you on the spot, now you
But
can sing
you
that.
did that in like 1.5 years. You basically caught up to most of our team's accolades in about 1.5 years. You know, created an award-winning
But
collection
to me,
of
it
production
didn't.
music.
To me, it didn't feel any different than, you know, writing songs, you know, in my apartment that were just for me. Like it was. It didn't feel any different than that, because I think what works with clients and what works with when you obtain a brief is that, you know, you don't just write to the picture, or you don't just write for the client. You put I think we put more into it than that, and that's what has made our writing camp with like you and Jesse, you know, so successful and unique. And not to brag about it, but I mean, I'm proud of the the work that we've done that has led to our writing camp with the three of us. Because I think we really focus on the quality and not just throwing out a bunch of songs and seeing what sticks. And I think, clients appreciate that too.
So around that time, so just to also transition us, because this is a perfect. So you knew that you didn't want to be an actor who was going to be told what to do. You knew that you could write music. And then I was like, hey, you should go to Nashville and try writing there. So the whole theme of you knew what you didn't want to do. Tell us what happens really next, because this is probably the most exciting part of the story, and really the reason why I think people will learn a lot from a career path of knowing what you don't want to do.
Yeah, I think you and I had been working together for, this is now like 2 years, and I was going out to Nashville and doing writing camps there, or writing sessions. It wasn't a camp, but after traveling back and forth and sort of realizing, what it would take to get those songs out, it just seemed like I got to this point where I thought, I don't want to tour. It was embarrassing to say it though, because, you had been so supportive and everyone had, and I just sort of felt like I was going to let a lot of people down if I said, I don't want to be an artist. I just want to write songs and avoid traveling. And so finally you said, why don't we record these songs that you've been writing in Nashville? Because I'd come home with like a suitcase of like 5 songs, 2 of them, 3 of them, okay, like 1 of them really good. And so it was like, let's just record these. And you said that, and I didn't understand why you wanted to do that. And you were like, let's just record them. And then I finally said, I don't want to tour. I don't want to be an artist. I don't see the point in recording these songs. Like, what are we doing with them? And you said, well, let's just record it and we'll figure it out. And so we set up a live session at the Village, and we did a 8-hour.
And by the way, for anyone listening, that's an iconic studio where Fleetwood Mac recorded everyone from Dr. Dre to Usher to Counting Crows to Robert Plant. It's so it was we were like, hey, if we're gonna do it, let's do it right.
Yeah, and it was cool doing like the live recording, and that's something that's always been a fear of mine. Recording songs that I've done is you hear some things come back and it's like way overproduced, and it it's not going to sound like that live, and so I kind of had this bad taste in my mouth about recording the songs I'd been writing. But the way that, Jared put together the session, it was really just a really unique experience, and it brought a lot of magic, I think, to the album. And we just set up and did a live session at Village Studios, and I'd never done anything like that, and it was a day that was like really intense, and I was terrified. And any pictures from that day,
it was like Sun Records style. I was like, you have 8 hours.
Yeah.
I was like, if we go an hour over, that's costing a lot of money. So she was conducting, essentially giving us the songs for the first time to the drummer, the pedal steel player Jesse, myself on bass. And then we would try and just get the bones of a really awesome room so that later she could go back and do her vocals on top of everything else. But it was high pressure even for me.
It was so stressful. And I've gotten a lot better with like the production music stuff, like especially from the album with 5 Alarm. But at that point, I was not confident playing to a click. And that was so important for you guys. So our drummer, Quinn, he became sort of the click and driving the songs, and so it was terrifying, but it turned out great, and I'm so proud of it, and I wouldn't do it any other way. I think it's you see like some artists, and it's a year in the studio of getting all these sounds and layers and layers of tracks, and I just love the way that we did it in one day, did it live, and it sounds pretty damn good.
Sounds pretty amazing. I listened to those records, and so since that, those became the bedrock of, just to fast forward, because we got about 15 minutes left with Scarlett here, but I'm going to just fast forward you to the next part, which is she's like, I don't want to tour. We have these amazing songs. And, all of a sudden we have an opportunity to take, these things and turn them into a story. Explain how that happened, because everything that happens next is sort of a dream scenario, I guess, for any writer,
right? I think
show creator, producer.
I think everything said so far in this podcast episode is that it was like,
it's your biopic.
Oh, I mean, it was just a lot of like, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to stay in LA. I'm going to see what sticks, but what makes me feel fulfilled. And this had become something that really made me feel more fulfilled than any other career I had attempted here in LA. And but with all these songs and now they're recorded, and it's what do we do now? And so Jared and I came up with the idea of turning it into a scripted drama series podcast. And so each song is an episode, and you hear the unfolding of the song. And it's based around a songwriter's work tapes, which is our voice memos on our phone. And so you get to hear like the perspective of the songwriter. And the song itself becomes a character, and you learn how it travels from a writing session with an unknown songwriter.
That's really awesome. I didn't know that either, and I was lucky enough to be a part of this podcast.
It's a pretty neat journey.
And I'm in the show. It's awesome. I'm playing Elliot. But my question is, so you wrote these songs beforehand, and then you sort of wrote the script around the songs, which is very interesting, because when we were reading it, I wasn't sure if you had the songs before or if you had written them based on what the script had said.
Yes. The songs that I had written, there were 6 songs written, and then with absolutely no idea what they would be used for. And one of the songs that I had written was a song called Make It Up As We Go, and I was in Nashville, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I mean, I had just stepped away from acting. Here I am working, freelancing with Jingle Punks, going back and forth, songwriting, and not really knowing how this is going to be a career. And so I walked into this session, and they put us in this room that was like the size of a closet with a utility pole in the middle of it. And so I'm sitting on the floor, and it was just all I could tell myself is we're just going to make it up as we go. And it's sort of been my self-soothing mantra as far as I've been in LA. And so we wrote a song called Make It Up As We Go, and that is now the title of our podcast. The song. So those 6 songs came first, and then we wrote 2 songs with Miss Nicole Gallion, who is a mega hit songwriter in Nashville. And she had just won, before our session, she had just won, what was it, Song of the Year,
ACM Song
of the Year, and
for Tequila.
ACM Song of the Year award. And I text Jared and was like, she's going to cancel on our session. This is...
I was at the awards show, and I see her on stage, and I was only vaguely familiar with Nicole's name. Then they're like, first award, Nicole. I was like, Scarlett texts me, she's like, she's canceling. We're flying to Nashville tomorrow, and that's definitely a cancel.
And she showed up. I mean, she showed up, and she was very, professional, and I think that's what this whole thing is about, is that you just have to show up.
Wasn't it Woody Allen?
Because you don't know what that could lead to. And that's sort of, I think...
No, it wasn't Woody. He's canceled anyway, so you can take... He's canceled. You can take that
Woody
one.
Allen. I said it. Who's that?
Someone else. Yeah, we don't know.
Yes,
I don't
Woody
know
Allen
who
was
that
the star
person
of
is.
Home
We'll
Improvement.
He's the Home Improvement. Is that the
honestly,
guy from Home Improvement?
The amount...
Okay.
Tim Woody Allen. He did play Woody in Toy Story, but that's a whole other thing. Hold on, but there was a whole lot of firsts that were intimidating even to me. Like I've been around the block for, in multiple careers, and the amount of firsts that we also did together as partners on this project, walking onto the Sony lot and her and I pitching David Hudgens, I got to say, like everything, like the making of this thing has been like its own story because I was nervous, and then Scarlett's like, "Shit, I'm stuck in traffic," so I'm like, "I better tap dance for 10 minutes and warm up the room while she's coming." But ultimately, our sort of quirkiness, or maybe not unprofessional, but like just realness to us, won the room over. And David basically was like, "I like the songs. You guys are strange. Let's rock." And he's one of the biggest showrunners. And she's like,
Amazing.
"Oh, Jared, is that typical when you just like have a bunch of songs and you pitch Sony?" I was like, "To be honest, I've never done this in my life, so I don't know." And like we walked off the Sony lot, and he's like, "Let me walk you to your car too." It wasn't the brush off meeting, and believe me, I've had the brush off meeting where they're like, "You can't come in the building. Let's meet at Starbucks next door." That's like what WME and CAA used to do when I first started. They're like, "I'll meet you someplace off site, so I don't have to be seen with you." But I mean, that you had that first. You had going to Atlanta and meeting with the president of the podcast network and us having to explain the marketing plan. Like along the way, we've sort of, me too, like become like producers.
Right.
It wasn't
It's
just
learning about all the aspects that go behind. I mean, we've really rolled up our sleeves on this project, and I'm so proud of it. And no matter what happens with it, I'm very, very happy with the production and the work that we've put into it. And it hasn't really felt like work. We've been so passionate about it. And I think that's what comes across in the room, when we've pitched, and I think it's made other people, excited about the storyline. And, it's about a girl that, moves to Nashville, doesn't have a dime to her name, and can't put gas in her car, and takes off from there. We won't give away the ending, but
so who else is in it? Tell people at least who else is part of this thing.
This week, we have Mr. Billy Bob Thornton playing the role of Van Tyler, who's a writer producer in Miranda's camp, which is very true to the reality of people like artists like Miranda, as they have their camps around them. It's like a close confidant, because you've got to be. It's a vulnerable place when you're songwriting. So there's Billy Bob, and then there's Dennis Quaid playing the role of my character's dad. And then we have Mr. Craig Robinson, and he is playing my vocal coach. And we've been doing all of the VO work through Zoom. And it's been really working out. Like, we're incredibly fortunate that we've been able to continue on during, a global pandemic. Getting everyone's lines and dialogue, and and of course Miss Miranda Lambert.
And I know that it's been a terrible time for a lot of people who are listening to this, and I think in the future, any person who's listening to this to learn lessons is like the adaptability of everybody involved in our project, from you and I just saying, okay, COVID's here, but we're not shutting down production, to even Dennis being an awesome, adaptable person who's like, hey, I can't get Billy Bob to get on the set, but he lives near me, and I'm going to drop off one of these microphones at his house, and then Scarlett, you're going to direct on Zoom. Like, the whole thing has been, to me, the making of it has been just as exciting as you said. Like, it's not out yet, but I feel more proud and excited about what's happened around this thing than anything I've ever been involved in. I've been involved in quite a bit.
Yeah, it was a little intimidating working with Billy Bob, but he was so laid back and relaxed, and a pro, and it was. But when I wanted him to redo a line, I could, like 2 years ago, I was a KFC crunch dancer in a KFC commercial, and so I didn't feel completely confident in directing Billy Bob Thornton. So, but he was great, and we're just going. It's like, I'm trying not to say that phrase, but that's the truth. So,
well, this is the story that I was hoping you would tell, and this This is just the anyone who's entering into the workforce now, whether you're a student who's just graduating from school or someone who's moving to LA, they're going to have their share of telling their family that they're in the movie when they're on the cutting room floor. They're going to have their share of, being sort of negged when they show up in Nashville writing in a room and being treated like a second-class citizen. But I think that the biggest, and I'm about to say something that's going to make all of us look so smart, so get ready. When you and I talked about the podcast the first time, I said Hollywood loves doers. Billy Bob Thornton was a character actor in like bad sitcoms until he wrote, directed, produced, and starred in Sling Blade. And we talked about that before Billy Bob Thornton was even a possibility of being involved in any of these things. So such a full circle moment. And I know for a fact that's why he likes this medium and he liked working with you, because many people in this town talk a lot of trash about what they're going to do or producing or I'm making this, I'm making that. Literally how we've done this has shocked a lot of people, especially people who have said that just doesn't sound like a real thing. And when it's all said and done with the people we've gotten attached to the soundtrack, the actors that are in it, the writers that are attached to it, and just the commitment to make it sound something completely unique. I would just, even though I'm part of this with you, I would say you've done, the work that I think is going to set you up for the next decade of your career, because this town likes doers. And, when Disney has to do the next Nashville-inspired animation Pixar thing,
when can we expect us to actually see the podcast get released?
Oh, thanks for saying that. It takes... Jared, I think that's been
Scarlett?
July 4th?
Hopefully. I think we're going to know more next week, but the thing is mostly complete. Now we're just going through the marketing strategy of all of it, so we're working with iHeart. I would say
it's a summer release.
Make It Up As We Go is coming soon. It's a summer release. Coming soon at a time when there's no content coming out. We have new music and a new, audio experience for people with Make It Up As We Go. And Scarlett, is there any additional things that you would say to one piece of advice that's gotten you through your career, but besides just showing up? What else, is there to know?
I think you have to do what makes you feel fulfilled in life, or else your passion's not going to be in it, and other people aren't going to, they're not going to want to be as involved as much. But when Jared asked me to do this, I was like, but what? I don't really know why you're asking me, because I still feel like this has happened so quickly, but in such a long period of time. I mean, I've been in LA for over a decade. But my advice is to just do what makes you feel fulfilled.
Well, I think...
And success will
Amazing.
follow.
Thank you.
I mean, I think you're doing it.
So much for doing this with Zach. Any thoughts on
obviously
whether or not
this
I
was
could
an easy one to say.
Follow in the footsteps of
you're involved in the
Scarlett
project
and
as much as she is, and
career?
it's pretty awesome to hear. It's good to... I never knew the origin stories of all this stuff. I just sort of have heard the songs, and Brett was in the script or in the actual recording, so it's nice to hear that, and I hope people listening, because I got a lot of the similar stories as you, Scarlett, a lot of cutting room floor moments. You got to stay strong here, man.
Or like I was one of my first actual, I was an extra on CSI something, and they had me drive out to again in Malibu, and they were like, okay, we need you to just lay in this dirt. You're gonna be a dead body. And I was like, yes, because I thought I called my parents, and I was like, you're gonna see me on TV. And it was a dead body, and all you saw was my hand. But my mom, she was like, oh my God, I see your hand. Oh my God. And she was so supportive, and God bless my parents. I mean, my family's been incredibly supportive and enthusiastic about anything from being a dead body on a crime show to deciding to venture out into the world of songwriting. So... yeah.
Well, from crunch dancer to podcast entrepreneur, that's Scarlett Burke. Thank you again so much for being part of this. I'm really looking forward to creating more with you, and occupational therapy. There you go.
It's an honor to be here, guys. It's nice to see you in a different setting from Make It Up As We Go. But yeah.
Bye, guys.
Good to see y'all. Thanks for having me.
Everyone stay in touch. So long and tutu.
Bye.
Ta-ta.